I am Teashia. I am from Yonkers, New York. I am 35 years old. I am a CPA and consultant. I found out I had a health problem technically while I was pregnant. However, all of my life, I had my period when I was 10, and I had really bad cramps all my life. And I was always telling the doctors, like, my cramps are really bad. Like, something has to be off. And they'd say, oh, no, that's normal. Just take more pain meds. And so I would take up to like 12, let's say, pain meds. And it didn't sit well with me, but I mean, that was the only option, or get on birth control. And at the time, I didn't want to add hormones to my body. So once I was pregnant, I got sonogram, normally as you would, to check up on the baby. And that's when they told me I had fibroids. So I didn't know before that, but it clicked. I had fibroids all along, and maybe the symptoms weren't enough to warrant any concern from the doctors until I had a baby and my baby was sharing space with the fibroid. When I heard I had a fibroid, it was like an aha moment. I thought, okay, finally, something makes sense. Obviously, for me to have cramps so severely, there had to be something wrong in my body. And so I put a name to what could have been causing cramps at this severity, at that level, all those years. So for me, it was a good thing to know, okay, there is something, and then I could research and understand it better. So when I say severe cramps, throughout my childhood and up until adulthood, what I mean is, like, I would take 12 ibuprofen in a day for the two heaviest flows of the day as far as pain relief. When I was younger, I didn't take that many. So I would like take a day off of school, or if I had cramps in the middle of the day, I'd go to the nurse's office and take a nap. And that normally, sleep is basically what would normally help. So either take a day off or take a half day or take a break at the nurse's office in childhood. And then early adulthood, I would maybe go into work a little later and then catch up on my work on the back end, take a nap, or go into the mother's room if my office had a mother's room, and take a nap there to kind of just recover for the heavy days. I got my first period at 10. And then for 20 years, I asked my doctor, are my cramps normal? Like, they were so severe. I would take days off of school. I'd have to nap to get through the pain. And they said it was normal. So after a while, I stopped asking, and I said, okay, well, how many pills can I take? How many ibuprofen pills can I take in a day so that I don't hurt myself, right? And so he said 12. So 12 pills in a day. And so that's what I did. And so I realized now that was wrong, right? Later on, I suffered from acid reflux, which is, if you research ibuprofen, if you take an excessive amount, it can cause issues like acid reflux. And I realize now that it was wrong. Like, so much could have went wrong with me taking that amount of medicine for that period of time. But now I know better. So the severity of the cramps were like maybe 2 out of the 6 days I had the heaviest cramps. And then once I got pregnant is when I found out I had the fibroids. When I had my baby and I bled for the 3 months straight before my normal cycle returned, well, not normal at all, but before my regular periods returned, it was a light flow. So it would go back and forth between a light flow and a spotting. So I think it's spotting, and then it go back to a light flow. So that blood wasn't enough to be considered a period. Like, you can tell the heaviness of a flow for a period versus like some spotting and light bleeding. But it did last 3 months, and they were saying it will go away eventually. Once the bleeding stopped, I felt relief, but then 2 weeks later, my actual period came. So that's a good thing, right? Your cycle's getting back to having a normal cycle every month. However, that cycle was the heaviest cycle of all my life. I've had my cycle at that point almost 20 years. So I would go through, I don't know, maybe 3 pads in an hour. I had really large blood clots. It was alarming. So I would also feel weak and need to take a nap, not because of pain, but because I felt weak from losing a lot of blood. But the biggest concern they always say, if the blood clot is the size of a quarter, then you should reach out to the doctor. I would reach out to the doctor, and they had nothing for me. And then I would reach out and say, okay, when should I go to the hospital? And it was like, oh, well, you're okay. It was just never like an emergency to them. So sleep helped. And I guess the good news is that I had 2 heavy days. So it would be after those 2 days, I'd return to an easier to manage flow after that. And so because it didn't last more than, the heavy days didn't last more than 2 days, they didn't think it was a big deal, I guess, and thought, like, as long as I considered birth control or cutting it out. If I was not going to do those things, then there was not much else they could do. The quality of my life did suffer after, of course, I said 3 months after I gave birth, I bled a light flow. But then after that, for at least, I thought like after a couple months of this heavy flow that my body would normalize. And so after 3 months, I said, okay, I have to do something about this because it was heavy. I was losing blood and all this stuff. My energy was low. And so I went and got some blood work, and they did say I was severely anemic. And which makes sense, right? Considering the amount of blood I did lose. I found myself feeling like, in the moment at least, that birth control was the only option. And I just needed a breather to be able to do research and dig into what my long-term solution was. But temporarily in that moment, to stop myself from bleeding to death, I thought birth control was the only option. And so I spent all this time not getting on birth control, having my son using natural family planning, and then in the end had to use birth control to stop myself from bleeding so severely. I had a partner that was my consistent partner, my husband, and my now husband. So I felt like if I was responsible and paid attention to my body and my cycle, and we used proper precautions, and that we can plan when we were to have the baby without using a hormonal substitute. And I didn't know how the hormones would affect a baby boy. I didn't know how the hormones would affect my body long term. I had done some research, and I heard about cancers for people being on birth control for a long period of time. And so I figured if I'm going to be careful and if I'm going to watch my cycle, like they tell you in school, like how and when you can get pregnant, it's not every day of the month. And so I just tailored my intimacy around that. And it worked for me. I've been with my husband, 100 years. So now I am on birth control, and, I stopped breastfeeding right away because we didn't want my son to have the hormones from me breastfeeding. So we did have to plan it that way. But he was 7 months at the time when I stopped. So we were like, okay, it's a good time. I stopped breastfeeding, and then I started the birth control. And so that did allow my periods to go back to being on a normal cycle, in that it was 6 to 7 days long, my periods. However, the cramps were gone, but the amount of bleeding was still excessive. So let's say the amount of bleeding before I was on birth control was a 10, with birth control was 8, which is better. And it was within 7 days. But I knew that was not the long-term solution. There was no reason why I would bleed more than I did after the baby than before. But I just needed a couple months to buy time. And then once I found out I was severely anemic, I needed to get that under control first. I was really close to needing a blood transfusion. I wasn't there yet. I was right on the cusp. So I did, iron transfusions and had to change my diet to make sure that I was not going to bleed at that level anymore. Once I found out that my iron levels were severely low, I found out because I just did an annual physical with my primary doctor. She called me, and she had a very sincere and concern in her voice. And she was very concerned and said I needed to reach out to the hematologist. So my number was 7.5. A good friend of mine who is an OBGYN says that, typically her patients when they're at a 7, that they have blood transfusions. So it escalated in my mind. I couldn't understand why the doctor was so concerned, right? And she was just saying, reach out to the hematologist. I was like, oh, I feel fine. But clearly I was not fine. My energy levels were low for a reason. So once I found out what 7.5 meant, and that was actually severely low, that I am lucky that I don't have, that I feel as okay as I do, which I didn't feel that great, but I guess I got used to feeling the way I felt. And so I didn't think anything alarming of it. I thought maybe I was just tired from having a new baby. I went to the hematologist, and they put me on a program to do iron transfusions. I did that for 5 or 6 weeks, as well as take iron supplements to get my levels back to normal. Another way this affected my quality of life is that I became very dependent on the birth control pills, as my temporary solution. And so after 2.5 years of the pandemic, not going on vacation, we finally decided our son was old enough to take on a family vacation. But however, I realized midnight before the trip that I did not have enough birth controls to last me through the trip. And obviously, if my periods were before 2 weeks long without birth control, and the heavy flow went from a 10 to an 8 with birth control, I was not going to enjoy this trip without being on birth control. So I called 2 different doctors' office multiple times to get the on-call doctor to give me, a prescription that day. And I was going to go to a 24-hour pharmacy to fulfill it. Well, the one doctor said that wasn't an emergency. And I had explained how severely anemic I was and my fibroids and the heavy flow and all of that. And for them, it wasn't considered emergency. That was really upsetting. And then I found another doctor's office that actually, my primary, that actually did come in and did call back and make me this prescription. So I was able to fulfill it, but it was a moment where I felt so dependent and almost like I didn't have any control. Like I forgot to fulfill, my prescription timely. I think I had like maybe 3 pills left and the trip was going to be like 5 days. And so that freaked me out. And from that moment, I was like, okay, no, I cannot depend on this. I definitely need to work toward finding another solution. This is the solution for now, but I can't depend on that long term. I was on birth control for a total of 6 months. During the time, I realized let's say I forgot a pill, I forgot to take the pill one day, I would bleed right away, as if I was starting my period. It could not be. So the way the birth control pills work, there is almost like a calendar, let's say, and you have a week of slot of where your period would come in. So let's say my period is supposed to come in on the 4th week and I stopped taking the pill on the 2nd week, I would get a full period right away. And it would take a couple days, even if I restarted taking the pills, take a couple days before I would start bleeding. And so I this contributed to me being dependent on the birth control because it did not allow any room for error, which is why I didn't want to be on birth control in the first place, because I'm not that good at taking pills every day. Professionally, I was not affected as much as I could have. Because we were in a pandemic, I was in a situation where I was able to work from home. And being able to work from home, it was easier to manage heavy blood flows and feeling lightheaded or anything like that. If I had to go into the office, it would be a whole different story. It would have affected me drastically. But because I was able to work from home, I was able to make up, once I was feeling better, I was able to make up any work that I missed. If I needed to take a nap, I was able to do that. And I had a bit more flexibility. When I think about how this affected me personally, other than, birth control being a crutch and depending on it for me to live a normal life, temporarily at least, I realized that my mindset of what was normal for a period was completely warped because I had experienced, severe periods all my life. Like my first period, I was 10, right? Like my mom was like, okay, it's okay to take days off. So I would just take days off when I needed it. And luckily I was good in school, so that I was able to catch up. But that's not normal. I recognize that now. And especially as I think about other women in my life, there's plenty of women I know that don't deal with this level of pain. And I know that there are many that do. But I recognize now that it is not normal. And it's frustrating that I had been explaining it to my doctor all through my childhood. Like, hey, like my pain, my cramps are really heavy. And there was never a solution. And then when I found out what the problem was, the solution is cut me open like a fish. I just don't understand how that would be the first option and how no one thought maybe to give me other options initially. And so luckily I did not, I didn't accept that option. I just know I needed some time to think and research and reflect on what the future would look like. But once I recognized that it wasn't normal, it gave me the motivation to figure out what normal was and how I could eventually get to normal. As I mentioned, that birth control was a temporary solution for me. It required me to start doing some research to understand fibroids and understand the cause. Obviously, the doctors were only telling me that they don't know the cause and that it happens to most Black women. That didn't make sense to me. If it's happening, then there has to be a reason. So I had to do some research and, I was watching a ton of YouTube videos and other women saying that they had, shrank their fibroid in some capacity. But it was just too much information out there. And I also read a fibroid elimination book, so that gave me hope that there is more out there, but I'm very analytical. I needed like concrete steps of what to do. I needed an actual plan and I needed support. And so because I knew it was possible, so I knew birth control was temporary, but I was kind of all over the place. I listened to so many different YouTube videos of different women and their journeys, but I needed, one source, I guess. and someone to actually talk to, because I couldn't reach out to the person. I guess I could reach out to people on YouTube, but I don't know these people. But I felt like I needed like a face, a human, and to be able to tell my story to someone that understood. Obviously, my family and friends are very understanding. I do actually have one person in my life that did suffer from fibroids as well, but they don't have any children, so it wasn't as severe as mine. But all of those things gave me hope that there was more out there. It gave me the courage to set a plan, so I had said, okay, I'm going to give myself, I think I gave myself 8 months. I said, I'm going to give myself 8 months to figure it out naturally. And if I don't figure it out naturally, then I'll go ahead and get the surgery to eliminate the fibroid through surgery. And that was step one. I found out about the Detox Now from the Breakfast Club interview. Before that, I'd watched a bunch of YouTube videos, and I've read a fibroid elimination book from a vegan chef. So one of the YouTube videos I watched was with Dr. Amun, and he referenced that vegan chef that I had read. So it connected the dot and made me want to listen to more of his videos. And then I stumbled across the Breakfast Club interview, which really put it all together for me. It was exactly what I needed as far as the organization and the details. And I'm very analytical, so I needed like all the steps. And so then I downloaded the app and have joined the community since. For me, because I had a timeline of when I needed to be healed before making a huge decision on whether I was going to do surgery or not, it was important for me to spend the 8 months or however many months I gave myself strategically. And I had to look at my history of how I've achieved certain personal goals in the past as far as weight loss is concerned, right? And so a lot of times you're on a diet one day and then you're lollygagging the next day. And so what I didn't want to happen is 8 months to go by and I'm in the same place. And now I'm getting surgery, not because I didn't have the right tools, but because I didn't use them. So I had to think about my personality. I knew I needed a bit of structure. And so for me, signing up with Coach Jessie for, accountability was very important, right? I needed encouragement, number one. And then when I was struggling with things like, okay, well, what about coffee? You said not coffee. Can you explain to me? I needed to understand the why behind everything. I'm not motivated unless I know the why. And so me knowing that about myself helped. I said, okay, I would ask a lot of questions on why and all of the items on the food list. And I needed the motivation and seeing someone who had also have dealt with these women issues that I could relate to. So it was very helpful to have support and not just be on an island, in this journey. I wanted to have community. And then also you have so many people telling you, no, you can't do it this way. It was important to have someone that says, yes, you can. Because the doctors, right, you see your doctors regularly, those are the people who have a loud voice in your mind, I guess. And so it was important to combat that in a way, positively. Not only did I sign up for all of the elixirs they had that were targeted for fibroid elimination, I also added coaching. So I got private coaching 101 because I started with group coaching, but I realized like I want the whole time for myself. I want to break down me, right? I don't want to generalize this, right? I have a very specific time frame. And so, the doctor generalize it and they don't target to you particularly. So I wanted it to be targeted to me, for me. And I wanted to be able to talk about, my circumstances, right? I'm anemic. So what do I do with that? I want to get off birth control. What do I do with that? So I set up for one-on-one sessions with Coach Jessie, and that was really helpful for me. It helped me stay accountable and I was learning throughout the process. So now these things are sticking in my DNA, I guess, more so than it would me just on my own reading it and just following a list, right? Now I understand things a bit more deeply. And so my why is a bit stronger, which is helping me stick to it. As a result of working on the Detox Now Balance program and working one-on-one with Coach Jessie, my life has absolutely improved. I am more motivated and I also have more information. So I feel more empowered that I can do it. I've now taken surgery off the table just based on my results so far. And I haven't done a sonogram or anything like that, but I physically feel better. I physically feel that there is change happening. And so that is enough for me to put all my faith, right? They say faith without work is dead. And so I feel like I've done my part. And through this program, right, I'm being helped and motivated and inspired. And so I truly believe I can do it now. I just need to see it through. And so surgery is not an option. I'm not the next time they do surgery is because I'm going to have a baby. Like, I'm not giving birth to a fibroid. It's going to eliminate naturally. And so my symptoms have dramatically changed. If nothing else changed, my symptoms changing is enough. My period went from 6 to 7 days to 5 to 6 days. My flow level went from an 8 on birth control to maybe about a 4 to 5 on no birth control, natural. I stopped birth control. So what I did was I stopped birth control maybe 2 weeks after I started the program. I just wanted to give my body a jump start with the program first. And then I stopped birth control. And so I haven't taken it since. I've had 2 periods so far, and they've been, I guess, what they consider happy periods, which is a weird thing. I never thought that was a thing. I was like, oh, that sounds good. But what is a happy period? No, literally, my periods are normal. And it also enhances intimacy with my husband if I'm not bleeding for, half the month. Also, my flow, like I said, my flow is lighter. My cramps don't exist. I went from taking 12 ibuprofen pills for 2 days during my period, the heavy days, to taking maybe 2 total for the entire period. So it's life-changing not to have that level of pain. And I can't go back. So that is my motivation. I won't go back. And so I know there's more to come. And I don't know what else to say. It's a good thing. Like, to know that my body can make changes. And if I have faith and I do the work, that I can make the change naturally. And I can't wait to go to my doctor and say, some things. Just can't wait to show her and say, look, like, you don't need to cut me like a fish. I'm not a fish. And, I just can't wait to tell my doctor I don't need the surgery. And I can't wait to show, medically that there is no fibroid. I still have work to do. I'm not there yet. But for me, the symptoms was a great start. Physically, there has been improvements as well. So number one is when I touch my belly, it has shrank. Like, I look pregnant. And my son's 19 months, and it's not fat because I've lost 35 pounds. It is the fibroid. Okay. There's no more fat in my stomach. It is the fibroid. So, but it has gone down, and it continues to go down. It does feel softer to touch. Intimacy does not have as much discomfort. I remember feeling a lot of pressure during intercourse, or like the fibroid was moving around as a result. It was very, very weird. I couldn't put my finger on what it was. And as time has gone on and it's gotten softer, that has improved. I remember there was a day where there was no discomfort, and I almost kind of forgot what it was like to have a life without discomfort when you're having intimacy with your husband. We've been so focused on a baby. Like, I don't think I realized how it impacted my intimacy. It wasn't until there was a day that I didn't have any discomfort, and it felt totally normal, as it would pre-baby. And my baby's 19 months. It shouldn't have took that long, right, to feel normal. But I just kept chalking it up to, okay, I just had a baby. So, I'm a woman, allow my body to heal. I just basically created a human life, right? So my focus wasn't like, that's not our focus right now. Our focus was our family. And so the moment I realized that there was no more discomfort and no more pain, I realized I've come a long way. It reminded me what it was like before. Like, there was a new normal. Like, I realized I'm not broken anymore. I realized I was dealing with something that is not normal. And shout out to my husband for being completely supportive. He didn't give me any complaints. He didn't pressure me at all. Right. And so he didn't pressure me at all. So I did not know until I knew. And now I won't go back. I went back and redid my blood work for my iron levels. And so I am now in the normal range. So that's good. I'm not severely anemic anymore. There's still work to do. I would like to get them a bit higher still, but the fact that I'm not bleeding excessively anymore, right? I can keep my iron levels at a normal level now. As far as my energy levels, it's crazy that I didn't know that I was very low in energy. And so it's night and day, my energy levels now. I can relate it back to work. So we have as a consultant, we have a certain number of hours that we should do. And when I, first had the baby, I would say the first I took 4 months off. And then the first 6 months after that, my energy levels were so low that I could not get through what they consider the minimum. There's like 2 minimums. My hours were pretty low, basically. And so my director was saying, "Hey, Teashia, your hours are low." And I was like, "I'll get there. I don't have it in me. I'll get there. Don't worry. I'm always a high performer. I will get there again. But right now I'm doing the best I can." Working just the minimum 40 hours was a lot of work. I just couldn't get the umph. I was missing an umph and I didn't know what it was. I just figured, I just had a baby. This is normal. And so once my iron levels started to normalize, I could see night and day. I'm able to work late if I need to. I'm trying to keep a balanced life as much as possible now, but just my energy in general, just getting to the minimum requirement at work. It's not a big mountain to climb anymore, getting to the minimum requirement for work. If we compare my flow, before and after, I would say, before I said, a level 10 to 8, depending if I was on birth control, and now it's about a 5. What that means is, on the heavy, let's just talk about the heavy days, right? Because I have 2 heavy days a cycle. So I would change, let's say on the heavy days, maybe 2 to 3 times in 1 hour. And now I just change when I use the restroom for sanitary purposes. So this is my new normal. I believe it can get even better from here. And now I don't second guess having to leave the house, right? If I had to leave the house for too many hours at a time in between changing, that was a thing for me. I was I'm uncomfortable. It's too much happening before, right? Not now, but it's too much happening, too much flow, right? Staying home was comfortable. Now I feel more free. I'm not dependent on birth control, right? I leave the house when I want. It's a normal flow. And so this is new normal for me. And I am sad that it took, 20 years for me to figure it out. But at the end of the day, I figured it out, and it can only get better from here. And so I want no one to go through this. It doesn't make any sense. I'm hoping that I can be an example. I'm hoping that when I go back and show my doctor, that she will then at least tell her patients that there isn't other options. Even if she doesn't know about them, she could say she knows people that have done other options that are natural that have improved their life. And so at the end of the day, surgery is not an option. It's not even a complete option if the fibroids can grow back. So that for me just didn't make any sense. I was I'm not doing that twice. My pain tolerance is 0. So I'm not going to do a surgery and then you tell me I have to do it again. That for me was enough to figure out other options. And so there's more solutions out there. And I guess my story is just starting. I hope that I can come back and show you that the fibroid is completely gone. I believe that day will happen. I realized with my personality, I'm never going to be perfect, especially when it comes to eating and living a balanced life. I have a son, I have a husband, I am a CPA, I work a ton. I have friends and family, right? There's a lot of things to juggle there. However, I'm not perfect. It's not going to be perfect, which is why it was important for me to have a coach. So those moments when I'm slipping, right, she can wheel me back in and re-explain my whys, right? And help me understand, solutions around my normal life. So the key was how can I do this in my current lifestyle and just make it a part of my life, right? So that it's not another thing that you have to do. I don't like to cook. I cook sometimes, but now I know options when I don't want to cook, what to do in those circumstances, what to do if I'm going to a barbecue, what to do if I'm doing this and this and that. And there are moments where, I throw all of that out the window, but I bring it back, right? I say, okay, you had a moment here. And so today is today. What are you going to do tomorrow? So I think it's just having those tools and realizing other people are doing it, people just like you, people like me who are a mess a lot of the times, right? And you don't have to be perfect to do it. And I think that's key. I think when I hear of people living their life in this healthy world, I'm just that's for you. But no, it's for you too. And I'm realizing that, and I'm growing, and there are some things now where I'm I'm not eating that. That's trash, like who am I've completely changed my perspective now that I understand the why and I understand some of the toxins in the foods. I think information is everything. Once you know better, you do better. And so I think that's key for me. It's not about perfection. It's about balance. And so all the things that make up you can all fit in one place. It's just a matter of balancing it and prioritizing the things that are important. And so if you don't feel great, right, you're not going to be your best self for anyone in your life. So balance is key. You being the best you, feeling the best you is important so that you can be the best you for those in your life, your friends and family. There was a point in time where I realized, I have more to give to the world. I have more to give to my family, in my career. There's more that I want to do, but I haven't always had the energy to do that. And so now that I know I can have the energy, I can have that balance, right? Helping me is number one now. So if I don't feel 100%, I'm not going to give anyone 100%. I can't even do all the things that I want to do. So it's important for me, number one, to take care of me, right? And feel good. And if you feel good, right, then you're going to have that balanced and healthy life that you deserve. But it starts with you feeling good. It's about balance, and balance starts with you. Prioritizing you so that you can feel your best is step number one.